please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Celebrating 16 years of Young Turks.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Young Turks, India's longest-running show on startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Shireen Bhan. On the show today, we put the spotlight on ride-sharing businesses globally in the light of the Uber-Grab deal that took place last week. So here's what we've got lined up for you on the show today. We get you an overview of where things stand for Uber post the merger with Grab in Southeast Asia, and a perspective on Ola's next move, or should we say SoftBank's next move. We'll also hear from Grab CEO Anthony Tan on his plans for Southeast Asia and the imperatives of going beyond just ride-hailing to truly service the Asian customer. We go behind the scenes with Gojek's engineering team in Bengaluru to understand what it's taken to build Indonesia's super app that covers mobility, food delivery, payments and much more. And we speak with Marcus Willig, the founder and CEO of Taxify, one of Europe's biggest ride-sharing startups with interests in Africa and even Australia, which is Ola's new playground. So as you can see, it's a packed show. Let's get this underway with a bird's-eye view of where things currently stand in some of the world's biggest ride-sharing markets and who the key players are, given all the deal-making that's been underway in the last 6 months, with SoftBank's Masayoshi Son and China's Didi Chuxing holding the puppet lines, if we may say so ourselves. Now, what you need to know before we begin is that SoftBank has a 15% stake in Uber, a 26% stake in Ola, and it is the single largest stakeholder in Didi as well. Interestingly, Uber holds a 17.7% stake in Didi post its sale and exit in China in 2016. So let's start from the west and move to the east, shall we? Now, Uber is the clear leader in the US, with Lyft a somewhat distant second, despite the delete Uber move that came in last year that led to founder and CEO Travis Kalanick stepping down. Now, like we said, SoftBank has a 15% stake in Uber, while Lyft is backed by a clutch of large private equity firms, automaker GM and China's Alibaba, Tencent and Didi Chuxing. Now, Didi is China's largest ride-sharing company, and as you will see, it is one that's got a finger or fist in each of Uber's biggest markets. Now, next up, Brazil. It's a case in point. In January this year, Didi bought homegrown player 99, thus going head-to-head with Uber in its second biggest market outside of the US. Let's move now to Europe. Didi has reported a 20% stake and a strategic partnership in Estonia's Taxify, which operates across 20 countries in Europe, Africa, as well as Australia. A close second to Uber in Europe, Taxify is also going head-to-head with Uber in about 15 African cities, from Nairobi, Lagos, Kampala, Johannesburg and Cape Town. Now remember, some of the European and African markets have formidable local players too, but both Uber and Taxify hope to capitalize on their network effects to win, if there is such a thing in an industry where every player is banking on its pool of venture capital to capture market share. The consolidation in Southeast Asia illustrates this very well. So now it's time for us to move east. Last week, Uber signed off on a deal with Singapore-headquartered Grab, now relinquishing its Southeast Asia business in return for a 27.5% stake in the new business that spans across Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, the Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia and Myanmar. Once again, there's a SoftBank Didi Connect, both of whom invested close to $2 billion in Grab in July last year. Uber, under Dara Khosrowshahi, is looking to list in 2019 and pouring VC dollars into running expense operations in this part of the world, along with discounts to riders, clearly makes little sense when it can reap the benefits while Grab does the heavy lifting. Now, while Grab is the clear leader in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, it's challenged by Google and Tencent-backed Gojek that dominates the market with its super app that covers bike taxis, food delivery, logistics, payment, and much more. All services that Grab is only now getting into. Indonesia is the fourth largest market by internet users, following the US, China, and India. And so that brings us to India. Reports are rife that SoftBank and Didi, both of whom are investors in Uber and Ola, are executing a grab-like deal in India as well. But CEOs of both companies have denied any such consolidation so far. Never say never, right? So before we go ahead and bring you voices from Grab, Gojek and Taxify, let's go across to Saina for a quick take on Ola's Australia foray and what markets could possibly come next for the company. Saina.
Thanks, Shireen. Well, we knew late 2017 onwards that Ola was looking at moving out of just servicing India. There were teams looking at Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, as well as Australia and New Zealand. Despite the former South Asian markets being much closer to home and similar to India, what tipped the scales as far as the Australian foray is concerned, that it's a developed market where consumers can spend more for the convenience of on-demand mobility. But what Ola, the third player to enter the market, is going up against Uber, which has been there since 2015, and Taxify, that went down under late last year. And it's not going to be an easy walkover for sure. At least for a while, till Taxify and Ola gain respectable market share away from Uber and the local taxi services, we can expect happy hours and the free rides to continue. We've also learned that Ola is looking at certain developed markets in Europe as well. Given that they might have a regulatory environment that's favorable, like they found in Australia, and either Uber or Taxify have a monopoly there, therefore making it easier for Ola to go in as a challenger.
Well, thanks, Saina. And we're now joined by Marcus Willig, the founder and CEO of Taxify. Marcus, thanks very much for joining us. You launched Taxify in 2013. You were just 19 then. And today, Taxify is one of the fastest growing ride-sharing platforms focused on Europe, Africa and Australia. So, Marcus, let me start by asking you, in the context of the Uber-Grab deal in Southeast Asia, what are your thoughts on the global ride-sharing market, and did you see this coming?
Sure. Overall, we see that it's the same pattern across the world. The local champions are typically more focused on the local customer, and that's why they are able to compete with global players and build a better product. So actually, it's very similar currently in Europe and Africa, where we are the local player, we are investing into local products, and it's much harder for a global player to battle on that many fronts at once.
Well, Marcus, given what you are saying about local players having leverage, Europe and US on the face of it seem like very similar markets. So what leverage do you have on Uber in Europe beyond better commissions for drivers and discounts for riders?
Yeah, so in Europe, for example, we have very different payment methods depending on the country. So in our case, we have integrated with local telecoms. So in the Baltic states, where we started, people can actually pay with carrier billing, which is very unique to us. In many European cities, we are allowing people to pay in cash because that's one of the most popular local payment methods, and a lot of people don't have credit cards. While when we look at competition, they typically come with one universal approach, which is to have in-app payments and credit card payments everywhere. But that just doesn't work in many countries. So payment methods are one of these examples of how we differentiate and localize the product. But there's a lot of different ways, one of them being safety. So also safety is a very different topic in different cities. When we look at some of our markets like Romania, then safety is a much bigger concern than it is in Northern Europe. So we need to localize the product by having different features that then tap into the local police or whatever is required.
So just to take that conversation forward in the context of this comment from Rajiv Mishra, SoftBank board director, who told the Financial Times in January that it wanted Uber to reduce losses in non-essential markets and focus on key territories like the US, Europe and Latin America. Now, what does Uber focusing on key territories like Europe mean for Taxify?
Yes, so we've been now competing with within the ride-sharing space for about 5 years, and we have been doing that with very little resources, but yet being very effective. So we think that we just have to keep doing what we have been doing so far, localizing the product, being as lean as possible, and actually giving the proceeds to the driver, not having high commissions ourselves. And we see that regardless of how much anybody invests in the market, we have already been competing in the space for years, and we don't see any major changes forthcoming. And also one of the reasons for that is because we have very great backers like Didi, who are able to support us financially if there's a need.
Well, Marcus, while we don't know how much China's Didi has invested in Taxify, reports suggest that they have a 20% stake in the company. Apart from the money, what benefits are there of having Didi on your side?
So Didi has been a great supporter on many fronts. One of them, of course, is purely financially, which allows us to expand faster and build products faster. But another thing is all the know-how from both business and technology side. As they have operated in China at scales much larger than any other ride-sharing app, then they have picked up a lot of experience over the years. And we can apply a lot of that to our markets in both Europe and Africa, which allows us to be more efficient and overall make the customer experience better while using less money.
Right. Now, speaking of Africa, what have been the learnings from Didi that have helped you grow out on that continent? Again, you're pretty much toe-to-toe with Uber in a lot of African cities. So what's it stacking up like?
So overall from Didi, we have learned a lot, especially because they also have very tight ties with Grab. So for example, in Grab's case, they have been extremely successful with motorcycles and scooters across Southeast Asia. And that's actually something we're just rolling out across Africa as well. So we launched that product a few weeks ago in many countries. So it's exactly about these kind of localizations, bringing different products to market that gives us an edge. And overall, we've now been in Africa for a number of years, and we're actually the largest ride-sharing player there, even surpassing Uber, which actually launched there before us. So Africa is a big priority for us, especially this year. So today we're in 6 countries. We plan to roll out into another 4 or 5 countries during this year already. And secondly, we're planning to bring a lot more new products to the market. First of those being currently motorbikes in many countries. And now we're looking to launch various pooling products where people can just get the ride at a much cheaper price point by sharing the ride together with other people. So we're looking at different vehicle types from 4-seaters up to 16-seaters to provide this type of service in many cities.
Well, moving from Africa to Australia, you got into Australia late last year and Ola got started there in January this year. Both of you are up against Uber. How do you see things shaking down in Australia?
So Taxify was the first global ride-sharing app to launch in Australia after 5 years of Uber going there. So we actually managed to get a lot of customer goodwill and bring a real first alternative to the market. And that's one of the reasons why we're still doing extremely well. The market in Australia is extremely large. So there's definitely room for 3 players to actually operate there sustainably and each of them having a profitable business. So I think it largely comes down to who is more focused on that market.
And finally, Marcus, what's the road ahead on profitability? When do you believe you could turn profitable?
So the ride-sharing business is very much city by city. So sure, we have some countries which are profitable, where we have now been for a longer time, and then there's a number of markets where we have entered recently in the past few years, and those require a lot of investments. On a group level, we could be profitable today if we wanted to, but as we see the opportunity so large and there's a lot of growth opportunity ahead, then we're prioritizing that above profitability.
We're putting the spotlight on the ride-sharing business globally in light of the Uber-Grab deal that took place last week. Now, Uber has a 27.5% stake and a board seat in Grab, which is the leading ride-sharing service across Southeast Asia. CNBC's Nancy Hungerford caught up with Grab CEO Anthony Tan in Singapore. Here's a slice of that conversation. Nancy began by asking Tan if this deal will make Grab's margins better and help it inch closer to profitability. Take a listen.
Yes, of course. Many of our markets will now continue to grow more and more sustainable. It's not just about us becoming more profitable. How do we become more profitable, at the same time serve society, serve our customers? And that's things like Grab Share, where we can bring down fewer cars, less congestion, cheaper prices, better incomes for our drivers.
You often talked about solving a problem when you set out with Grab initially. What is the single biggest problem you're trying to solve today?
How do we take who were considered completely invisible, from whether it's the banking sector or they just couldn't afford the basic financial services, or just weren't earning enough money because nobody would give them a chance because they were below the poverty line, and how do you make them visible?
And you're not the only one really trying to help the underbanked population in Southeast Asia, if you will. We know that Ant Financial through Alipay is trying to make a bigger push in the region. It's been widely reported that Jack Ma had spoken with Grab, even with you, in a prior fundraising round. Have you spoken to Jack Ma about what you're doing in payments and financial services?
I think Ant Financial, again, another great company. For us, is we're all about working with many, many partners. We don't fixate on ourselves on who's the best partner. We think about what are the biggest problems and how do we solve that problem.
You also speak about congestion as being a problem that you would like to solve. What role does autonomous vehicles play in this? You've experimented with autonomous vehicles right here in Singapore. Is this something you see Grab having on a full-scale level at some stage in the near future?
Yeah, we need to make sure that we embrace technology if we can make lives safer. If we can help reduce congestion through Grab Share and take off more and more cars off the road and really help people get from A to B safely, affordably. So, you know, in a market like Singapore, do we see a future for it? Of course.
Do you work at all with your partners like Toyota's investment fund? Hyundai was part of the latest fundraising round. Do they help you in the autonomous vehicle development side?
We work with multiple OEMs, and many of them, yes, we do talk to them about, and they're all passionate about mobility. So we are working with all of them to think about what are the best solutions for this part of the world.
You just recently spoke about Masayoshi Son. You've had the chance to work with him, and if I can just take another step back and talk about the future of the ride-hailing industry in general, a lot has been said about SoftBank kind of playing matchmaker in this. They've backed several players. Do you think we're going to end up in a world where there is greater consolidation and one major force with SoftBank at the helm here?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I can say that specifically to our deal, Masa's obviously a tremendous mentor that I learn a lot from. But Dara and I really spend a lot of time to do what is best for both our companies. And again, you know, and please check with Dara, but my understanding is they believe in Southeast Asia. They just want to know, hey, is this the most efficient platform out there? And that's why Dara invested in us. And now today they are 27.5%. They have a seat on the board, and we will continue to grow and be the most efficient platform out there.
As you look forward to the next stage with all of these various growth areas we've touched on, you must be thinking now IPO. How far along would those plans be?
I mean, now that, you know, one sector of our business is clearly has a clear path to profitability, that obviously becomes a closer and closer reality. But as we think about, you know, how are we growing Grab Financial, how are we growing Grab Food all across the region, we see these as complementary, and we see IPO as one of the many options out there.
When you say clear path to profitability, give us a deadline. When is it going to be profitable?
Actually, certain markets are already profitable.
Which ones?
Can't name them. Not right now, at least not in this segment.
And right on cue, earlier this week, Gojek, the largest ride-sharing and payments app in Indonesia, has made noises about its plans to expand out of its home turf and into Singapore to start with. Now, Gojek was founded by Nadhim Makarim in 2010 and is today valued at over $5 billion, and it has the backing of Singapore's sovereign fund, Temasek, China's Tencent and JD.com and Google as well. So what makes Gojek attractive is that it was one of the first ride-sharing players in the region to expand its services into food delivery, payment, logistics and much more. Here's some perspective on the scale at which Gojek operates. Now, Gojek does nearly 1.5 times more rides than India's largest sharing taxi app. GoFood does more orders than all of Indian food tech startups put together. And Gojek does comparable volumes to India's largest digital wallet. And what, or should we say, who is powering the Gojek engine? Well, it's an engineering team that operates out of Bengaluru. Yes, you heard that right. Let's take a look at their story.
I started writing code when I was still in the 3rd or 4th standard. By the time I got into my first job, I was already looking for opportunities, and a very good friend of mine, childhood friend, and I started our first startup in 2006.
I was always passionate about two things, cars and computers. For my engineering, I went with mechanical engineering and studied about engines, cars, fluid dynamics. After finishing my engineering and I joined the workforce, instead of going ahead with that, I decided to go with my second passion, which is computer science, and joined Infosys.
Sidhu Panappa and Niranjan Paranjpai first met at ThoughtWorks, a global technology consultancy servicing Fortune 500 clients. Sidhu, who had some experience in building products and had even taken a stab at starting up and failing, was soon able to convince Niranjan that they must launch their own boutique software engineering consulting firm. And that's what they did with C42. The rationale was to bring in the money with a consultancy business while building products on the side. C42's first product and one of their most successful was Ruby Monk, which was launched in 2012 and to date is one of the top destinations globally for students of the Ruby programming language.
And then finally, around early 2014, we started working on building out the CTO's consulting firm, because we realized that while you have a McKinsey or a BCG or a Bain that a CEO can reach out to when he or she needs help, there was no equivalent for the CTO. So we joined hands with very good friends and mentors of ours based out of Delhi, Code Ignition, and combined C42 and Code Ignition to form a company called Code Monk. And Code Monk went on to solve some really challenging technical issues as well as strategic problems for several Indian startups, and eventually ended up becoming a partner with Sequoia India, and started working across Sequoia India's portfolio to solve really challenging technical problems and as well as deal with strategic execution. And that is how we ended up talking to Gojek. In fact, it's interesting because at the time Sequoia sent us to Indonesia to meet their portfolio, we actually ended up considering Gojek as the least important, because at that time we spoke to 3 companies and Gojek was outright the smallest.
And once the C42 team began working with Gojek founder Nadeem Marakim, there was no looking back. Within a span of few months, Gojek had gone viral in Indonesia and proved to be a point of reckoning for C42.
We suddenly got a call from Roy, who is part of Sequoia, saying that Gojek is in trouble. They are growing so fast that the MVP which they had built to go to market is no longer able to hold the scale at which the business or the market is demanding the services which are offered by Gojek. On landing there, I saw the company was already doing close to 3,000 orders a day, which is not a small amount of order volume for a company which was only 3 months old. In early days of Gojek, we introduced something similar to surge pricing, but the motivation behind that was not necessarily to balance out customer and driver demand, but the motivation behind that was there are so many customers who actually wanted our service and it was putting a lot of load on our systems, that systems were crashing. So we decided that instead of being down for 2 hours, we would rather increase the pricing and serve less number of customers but be more stable. And when Nadeem approached us saying that, hey, we'd like to work with you guys and you guys like to work here, why don't we join hands? That was a no-brainer.
In the last 3 years, Gojek has grown 1,000 times with over 1 million registered drivers and serviced more than 100 million orders. It's expanded into food delivery, payments, logistics, and 18 other allied services. And today, Gojek claims to run an equivalent of 3 Indian unicorns with just a little over 200 people working out of the India office, in close collaboration with the engineering teams in Indonesia and Singapore.
For us, our ability to succeed in this market is defined by us building a team in India, Singapore and Indonesia that can go toe-to-toe with the best Silicon Valley has to offer. While we deployed a bunch of technologies, including programming languages that we believed were especially suited to the task, we have a strong preference for Clojure and Golang within Gojek. We also had our approach, the lean engineering approach that we follow, that made this rapid iteration and scaling possible. Without that, there was no hope that we would have sustained this. Because by the time we reached our unicorn valuation, which was in, I think, July 2016, our total engineering strength must have been sub 80 people. So 80 people handling 4 major products, plus about 5 minor ones, and all at a scale as big or bigger than the Indian ones, was all down to our philosophy around lean engineering. And the productivity of each individual working at Gojek is consistently being raised through automation. The last is really important. We have an obsessive focus on automation, where you will find that if anything is done better by a machine, we have a machine doing it.
Honestly, we're in the business of weaponizing technology. We can use weapons which are freely available in the market, but at one time, you actually have to start building your own weapons. And that becomes the most important and most difficult job for any engineer.
The real game is just getting started, with Uber exiting Southeast Asia and putting deep-pocketed unicorn Grab in charge. But this tweet by Gojek is telling, and perhaps its best battle cry. Thank you, Uber, for inspiring the world that technology can drive change, for showing us that product experiences outweigh promotions, for showing us that talent is the only sustainable competitive advantage, for challenging us to constantly raise the bar. We will miss your presence in Southeast Asia, but will continue your mission in product-driven experiences and take your learnings to drive bigger impact for the whole region.
Well, it looks like we are seeing the beginnings of a battle between two homegrown entrepreneurs taking place in Southeast Asia. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Young Turks. From all of us here, we hope you enjoyed watching the show. Send us your feedback. For now, goodbye and thanks for watching.